Good morning and welcome to the Trigg Minerals webinar. Today we're joined by Trigg's newly appointed Managing Director, Andre Boysen, who has taken over the role this month. Andre will provide an update on recent advancements at Trigg's flagship Wild Cattle Creek antimony deposit in New South Wales, as well as other activities across its project portfolio. Andre will also discuss Trigg's long-term strategic vision and its plans to become a future global supplier of antimony. If you have any questions during the session, please use the raise hand feature on Zoom. I'll now hand over to Andre for his presentation. Thanks, Andre.
Yeah, thanks, Kristen. Thanks for the welcome. And as Kristen said, I'm brand new in the role. I've only been in the role now for a few days. Going to take me a while to find my feet, but we hit the ground running, and there's a lot of action, a lot of things happening at Trigg, and I'd like to share some of that with you. I'm actually at the moment in a conference down in Sydney, a mining conference, and I'm going to share the presentation with you that I did at the conference late yesterday afternoon. And by the way, that presentation will be online a bit, or available to everyone a bit later today. All right, let me get started. Trigg is a antimony miner. We focused almost 100% on antimony, and we aim to become an antimony developer in New South Wales. So we have as you probably know as well, we have our Wild Cattle Creek deposit, which is Australia's highest grade undeveloped antimony resource at the moment. Our other key assets in New South Wales are Taylor's Arm, Spartan, and Nundle antimony projects, and they all show significant high-grade mineralization. Just coming back to Trigg, where we are at the moment, you all know our ASX code. We've got about 900 million, just over 900 million shares on issue, 43 million market cap, and the good news is we still have about $5 million in the bank. So a lot of you investors probably won't know what antimony is, or may not know what antimony is. So I'll take you through what antimony is and its uses, and given my experience, tell you a bit about the market and what I think is going to happen in the future in terms of demand and pricing. So antimony is a strategic metal. It's a critical metal, number one on the US critical minerals list. It's also on the Australian critical minerals list. And then there's three sort of broad uses for antimony. One is critical uses, strategic uses, and industrial uses. What's also significant is there's very few significant standalone mines outside of China. So let's just take a look at one of the critical applications. I'm not going to go into all of them. One of them in critical applications is for solar panel, and that's transformed into sodium antimonate, and that's used as a hardener and a clarifier for glass on solar panels. And we've seen a greater than 10% growth year on year in the demand for solar panels. Look at the strategic applications, which is probably not the best ones, but unfortunately, this is the world we live in. Strategic applications and it has been used for this for more than 150 years, used for ammunition to harden the lead, and also to harden artillery shells, missiles, etc. And then there's obviously the high-end applications that are strategic as well, which things like night vision goggles, fighter jets, and even submarines, which I'll speak to in a few slides. And again, we've almost seen a 10% year-on-year growth in demand for antimony just for those uses. And then the last sort of major application is an industrial application, and that's something most people would be probably more familiar with, and that's antimony as a fire retardant. So the antimony metal is converted into antimony trioxide, which is a white powder, and that's impregnated into household appliances, plastics, furnishings, fabrics. So everywhere you go, you might not know it, but there will be antimony all around you, probably in your house. Get on a plane, get on a train, get in a car. There's antimony everywhere, and it really works well as a fire retardant. Okay, just talk a bit about supply, antimony supply. As you can see on the map there, most of your big antimony mines, in fact, all of your big antimony mines are either in China or in that sort of Asian, Southeast Asian area. Now, obviously, China's got a tight grip on the strategic resources. They do 83% of the world's production at the moment, and they have about 55% of the world's resources in antimony. What's interesting to note is 10 years ago, they had almost 80% of the world's resources. So their stocks are are dwindling. They've been doing a lot of exploration, and they haven't found big new deposits of antimony. So they have a strong demand to get antimony from the rest of the world, which we've seen over the last 10, 15 years as well. Russian sanctions have obviously limited access to antimony coming out of Russia. Russia is quite I wouldn't say significant producer, but they are sort of in the top 5 or 6 in the world. China's banned exports, they say, to the world, but it's mostly just to the US. They've banned the exports. And places like Russia, NATO, Europe, US, Israel, even Australia, global stockpiles, strategic stockpiles have dwindled a lot over the last few years. And so we see the demand for antimony growing and growing and growing even more. At the moment, it's sitting at about 120,000 tons per year. We estimate that'll probably grow to about 150,000 tons of antimony metal or antimony products over the next couple of years. And we don't see the price dropping significantly. On the supply side, obviously, there's a dislocated supply at the moment. There's sanctions against the Russian production, which I mentioned earlier, export restrictions between the US and China, and there's no new Western mines. We've been saying it for more than 10 years that we need to develop the antimony industry outside of China, and we've been a bit slow on the uptake, and now everyone's rushing to start developing antimony mines, and I think we're well placed with our Wildcattle Creek deposit that's already got a resource around it to come online pretty quickly and start supplying the rest of the world. Something that's probably been on the news a lot, not probably, but definitely been in the news a lot over the last 4 years, is the AUKUS agreement between Australia, the UK, and the US. And I'm just going to give one example of where antimony is used and how critical it is just to this AUKUS agreement. So antimony is going to be used in semiconductors, ammunition, batteries, the bearing material, propeller shafts, antimony trioxide, again, as a flame retardant, not just in the cables, but all over the submarine. And then, quite importantly, lead antimony alloy used as ballast weights, but also for shielding and radiation in the submarine. So critical mineral and very critical for the implementation of the AUKUS agreement. If you look at coming back to the sort of global critical minerals context, there's been a big response from most of the world. A bit slow, but I think a big response in terms of, hang on, we haven't got antimony, we should go and find some. And you've seen all the executive orders coming out from Donald Trump saying, Department of Defense, the Import-Export Agency in the US to go and find antimony. So a bit closer to home, the federal government has created this critical mineral strategic reserve, which would incorporate national offtake agreements and strategic stockpiles. Now, how that's going to play out, we don't know. It's typically government. They move a bit slowly, and the devil is always in the details. So we'll see how that plays out. But I think there is up to $5 billion in funding available, and probably tax breaks as well from the federal government to start developing some of these antimony mines. So I think we're well placed to dip in and hopefully get some of that funding as well, and some support from the federal government. We are, by the way, on the New South Wales and federal government's critical mines list as we speak. And we're also quite aligned with the New South Wales critical mineral strategy. And the good news is, with all of the US tariffs, is that antimony is actually exempt from the import tariffs to the US. Now, if you just look at the little picture on the right, I've got a couple of circles there overlapping. You see that the UK actually produces 0 critical minerals. The USA produces some critical minerals like arsenic, bismuth, cesium, rubidium, and uranium. But the bulk of the critical minerals for the AUKUS agreement are going to come from Australia. And that's across the range, including antimony. So we're critical to this agreement, and we're critical to the long-term strategies or defense strategies of the UK and the US, and obviously ourselves. So just coming back to what we've got, this is all available on our website as well, and you've probably seen these pictures before in announcements we make, but I'll repeat them. On the right is just a map, a layout of our antimony projects that we have currently. So they're all within that sort of northeastern New South Wales area, and they're all located adjacent to the Lovato Resources Hillgrove Antimony Gold Project. as I mentioned before, our flagship project, Wild Cattle Creek, is listed on the federal government critical minerals list. And we're also finding that the New South Wales government is keen to co-invest in exploring, and for antimony and other critical minerals. The New South Wales government also recently announced a $250 million deferred royalty scheme for new critical minerals projects, and I think that's going to go a long way to just help push the projects along and encourage more people to invest in them. And of course, we're located in a proven mineral field surrounded by excellent infrastructure. New South Wales has got good roads, rail, ports. There's a big pool of qualified people that can work on the mines and support us. Coming back to the Achilles project, Wild Cattle Creek, just going to hone in quickly. So as a lot of you would know, but I'll just repeat it again. There's 1.5 million tons as we speak in terms of our mineral resource. Average grade is just below 2%. And we're sitting with a contained antimony metal of about 30,000 tons. And it's just a planned view on the right-hand side of the Wild Cattle Creek deposit. Coming back, another planned view. So the deposit is exposed on the surface over about 300 meters, which is quite significant. The high-grade ore, the high-grade core, extends about 350 meters down plunge, which is about 200 meters vertically, and it averages about 20 meters in thickness. So it includes antimony, as you would know from recent announcements, includes parallel structures of tungsten, as well as gold. And we definitely think that there's a gold system underlying the antimony resource. And when we do our drilling later on this year, that'll be one of the targets that we'll be aiming for, which is under the current ore body, to identify that gold bearing system as well. So there's excellent potential for expansion, down dip, down plunge, and out to the west. So which I'll also mention a bit further on. We think we can probably go with the Bealsdown fault, probably 6 kilometers or so to the west. So that'll all be explored in due course. So we use the resource cutoff grade. If you have a look at the long sections here on the right and the cross sections, we use the resource grade of 1%, which is economical, more than economical, especially at today's prices. What we have found is recently some of the announcements coming up from other antimony explorers is they've used the cutoff grade of 0.1%, which is even economical for them. So we are way ahead of the curve on that in terms of project economics. We'll also, once we start doing our drilling and the results start coming out, we'll give a further update at MRE, which is a mineral resource estimate, according to JORC, and that'll include the tungsten that was announced recently on the ASX. So again, the average width from the resource expands from about 5 meters to over 15 meters. So that lends itself to more bulk mining and more cost-efficient mining techniques as well. And yeah, like I mentioned, there's a very high potential for repetition of this ore body all along the 6-kilometer strike of the Bealsdown fault. So what are we going to do next? Obviously, we're always going to be mining in a safe, responsible manner, taking care of people's health and safety, and specifically in the environment as well. And we're going to be fully engaged with our local communities. In fact, I'm busy setting up meetings as we speak with some of the local communities in the Dorrigo area. So yeah, I'll hit the ground probably starting next week and start engaging with some of the local communities as well. Because it's important for us. It's important for us to get their buy-in. It's important for us, to support the mine. We're going to be providing a lot of services, or they're going to be providing a lot of services to the mine in the future. And economically, I think it's going to be good for the region as well. So what's next for us at Wild Cattle Creek? So we're busy establishing our site as we speak as well. And we're going to be focusing on doing geophysics first, followed up by further drilling at the Wild Cattle Creek resource to expand the current resource, and obviously at some stage to expand that resource further along that fault. We're also taking a look at the moment, gathering the data that we have or that's available, and we're going to be taking a good look at Spartan Taylor's Arm and Nundle deposits and see what we want to do there. Probably identify some good drilling targets and see if we can develop those into resources as well. But at the moment, we are focusing on Wildcattle Creek as our number one priority. We're also going to pursue any high potential antimony assets presented to us, and that's not just in Australia, that's worldwide. I can tell you it's almost on a weekly basis we get presented with projects of interest to us. And we can't look at every single projects, but we do have a good look at the ones that we think have good potential. Okay. And then we'll investigate the feasibility of downstream processing. And that means, not just concentrators, but also looking further down, in terms of smelters or refineries, depending on the technology used to extract the antimony and take the product downstream. And as always, we're looking for investment partners for our journey. So just in summary, I mean, we know that Wildcattle Creek is a high-grade growing resource in a world-class jurisdiction for antimony, and we actually have a very large footprint in that region. I think the price is going to maintain its high levels. I think it's going to take many, many years for supply and demand to start equalizing again. So I think the price, it might not stick at 60,000 or close to 60,000 for too many years, but I think we will never see the low levels of sort of $8,000 to $10,000 a ton again. I think it's going to take very many years for the price to settle. And my personal opinion, and this is personally just based on my experience in the market, I'm thinking we're probably going to settle between $25,000 and $30,000 in the longer term. So really good prospects for antimony. Again, we're committed to developing the deposits that we have by exploring, creating operating mines. We're not just an explorer. We want to actually develop these into operating mines, as well as downstream processing. And a big focus for us is we're going to keep looking for any other antimony opportunities in Australia and in the rest of the world. Obviously, given our very good investment partners that we have at the moment and any future ones that want to come along. And that's it for me. I mean, there's my contact details, and if anyone wants to pop through an email with questions or anything, go through Kirsten or go through us, and yeah, we'll try and answer the ones we get as soon as we can. Kirsten, over to you.
Thanks, Andre. That's great. We've got a time for a few questions. The first one is, when do you expect access?
So just to be clear about access, we actually have there's sort of three areas we're looking at an access around the Wildcattle Creek deposit. One is on forestry and conservation areas. Now those applications have gone in. We've cleared the natives titles, etc., and we don't expect that to be too long. Maybe a couple of weeks, 2 or 3 weeks. We should have approval to have access there, which is great news for us. Because if you look at the map of the area, there's quite a few forestry reserves in that area. Secondly, we actually already have access to a farm right next to the ore body, the Wildcattle Creek ore body. We have an option to buy that farm. We've got a 90-day option to buy that farm at a pre-negotiated price, and we're definitely going to take up that option. So we're going to use it as our base. It contains a house, shed, equipment, etc. So that gives us easier access to the ore body as we speak. So we already have access to that. The third one is actually probably the biggest property, the biggest landowner that we need access to. I can't share too much about that because it's obviously confidential and sensitive negotiations that are continuing. But all I can say is that we're progressing as expected with that.
Excellent, thank you. The next question, what is your estimate on how big Wildcattle Creek can grow?
Oh, wow. So just off the top of my head, being new and only been really with Trigg for the last few months, we've done some internal modeling, and we think just based on what we see and our drill plan, if it goes successfully, we can grow this resource into probably over 100,000 tons of contained metal. If you remember, we're sitting at about 30,000 tons. So that's more than 3 times the size of the current resource. Plus we have the tungsten that we recently discovered, plus the gold that we'll be looking for. Under the current ore body, we'll have the gold mineralization as well. And not just that, there's in the area we have the potential to extend the ore body, all the way down the the 6 kilometer Bealsdown Fault. It's not to say that this is continuous for 6 kilometers, but I'm sure we'll find other ore bodies there. And we really have some good prospects in old areas that were mined, or albeit on a very small scale. Places like Rula, Jezebel, and Wild Cattle Creek East. So we think at least at the very minimum 100,000 tons of contained antimony.
Thanks, Andre. All right, we have time for one more question. How will Wild Cattle Creek be developed?
So it'll be doing like any other mine. So, you go through the process of prospecting, doing your geophysics work. We'll be drilling. Based on the drill results, we create a mine plan. And the mine plan is driven by the geology. It's what's in the ground, what the structures look like, how easy it is to access them. But given the bulk, the size of the ore body, the width and the size of the ore body, we think we can mine it in typical sort of bulk and bulk techniques, using bulk techniques. Obviously, we'd have to go underground, but it'll be cost efficient. That's, given the width, it'll be cost efficient.
Okay, thank you. That's all we have time for today. You're busy at the RIU, so we'll let you get back to it. Thanks again for joining us. A recording of this webinar will be made available in the coming days. And for further updates, visit Trigg's website at www.trigg.com.au. Thank you for
Thanks,
joining.
Kristen. Thank you, everyone. Have a
Bye-bye.
good day.